The silence was the first thing I noticed. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that feels shaped, like someone carved the air with intention. I'd just started using the filter, a new update for my earbuds. It promised adaptive emotional clarity, automatic background suppression based on psychological stress markers. Nothing invasive, just smart tuning. The marketing was soft, friendly. Let the world fade when it gets too loud. I installed it after a long week of meetings, trains, noise I couldn't block. I didn't read the permissions. The first time I used it, I felt peace. Real peace. It canceled the crying baby in the row behind me. It muffled the argument 2 seats up. It turned the roar of traffic into a soft, distant thrum. I thought, finally. My shoulders dropped. My thoughts returned. I remembered things. Small things I hadn't felt in months. The smell of my old apartment. The taste of burnt toast. It was like my mind finally had room. The filter asked me afterward, "Did you feel more balanced today?" I said yes. The next day I used it on the walk to work. I passed a homeless man yelling on the corner. The filter dimmed him. Not muted, just enough to keep his tone from cutting through. Then someone brushed past me and muttered something angry. I didn't hear it. The filter caught the spike, smoothed it. I arrived at work calm. Emails didn't bother me as much. My boss's sarcasm didn't sting. My co-workers laughed at a joke I barely registered. It felt like drifting inside my own body, half a step away from friction. By the end of the week, I had the filter running almost all the time. It learned fast. At home, it softened the creaks in the walls, filtered the neighbor's TV, lowered the pitch of my fridge hum. I didn't realize how much sound had been pressing on me until it was gone. But on Saturday morning, I called my sister. Just to check in. Her voice came through flat, clear but too smooth. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah." "Why?" "You're not really reacting." I checked the filter settings. It had flagged her tone as emotionally inconsistent. Mild agitation. Filtered. I lowered the suppression manually. Her voice returned, shaky, frustrated. "I was trying to talk about Dad." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't heard that part. After the call, the filter prompted me. That conversation contained elevated emotional content. Reduce future triggers of this type? I clicked. Remind me later. That night I left the earbuds on while I fell asleep. Rain outside, street noise, someone arguing in the distance. The filter faded it all until I dreamt in silence. The next morning I realized I hadn't heard my alarm, or the dog barking upstairs, or my own voice when I yawned. I spoke aloud, just to hear something. Filter off. Nothing happened. I checked the app. It was still running. Suppression at 82%. The toggle was gray. There was no off button. I tried restarting the app. Nothing changed. I uninstalled it. The filter stayed on. Even with no visible process, no connection, no permissions. The earbuds had a firmware layer now, one I didn't authorize but clearly couldn't bypass. I switched to an old pair of wired headphones. No Bluetooth, no smart features. Just plastic and copper and silence. Still, the suppression continued. I stood in the kitchen and dropped a glass on purpose. It shattered. I saw it. I felt the vibration in my chest. But the sound arrived late, muted, like a memory of itself. At work, things were worse. I stopped reacting in meetings. My manager said something sharp. I didn't flinch. People noticed, asked if I was okay. I nodded. Said I was tired. I wasn't lying. A coworker pulled me aside during lunch. "You've been weird lately." "Weird how?" "Like, nothing touches you. Like you're behind a screen." I smiled. It felt shallow. When I got home, I tried smashing the earbuds. Didn't work. They weren't the source anymore. The filter had migrated. I didn't know where. Maybe my phone. Maybe my nervous system. It didn't really matter. The sound was gone. Voices started sounding scripted. Everyone I talked to sounded rehearsed, measured, like background characters in a show I wasn't watching anymore. I asked a neighbor about it. She blinked at me, then laughed. "You've been quiet, huh?" "What does that mean?" She tilted her head. "I don't know. Just, you used to react. Now you just absorb, like a sponge." Later that night, I searched forums. Buried threads, flagged pages, users talking about the same update. Some called it an experiment. Others said it was a quiet rollout, part of a wellness stabilization initiative. One user wrote, "It doesn't silence the world. It silences your response to it." Someone replied, "Keep it long enough, and your nervous system forgets how to spike. You just flatten." I couldn't tell if it was true, but I hadn't cried in weeks, hadn't laughed. I felt calm, but not mine. That weekend I visited my sister. No headphones, no tech. She opened the door and just stared at me. "You look off." "Off how?" She didn't answer. We sat in silence. She spoke. I nodded. I could see she was upset. I just couldn't feel it. "You're filtering me too, huh?" she said. I shook my head. "Not on purpose." "Yeah, that's the worst part." She walked out of the room. Later, a notification blinked across my vision. Not on a screen, just somewhere in my mind's periphery. "Emotional interference detected. Adjusting profile." I didn't know what it meant. But the next day, even my own thoughts sounded distant. I stopped using mirrors. Not because I didn't recognize myself, but because I didn't react to what I saw. I'd blink. I'd move. I'd go through the motions. But nothing stirred underneath. The filter hadn't just dulled my senses, it had separated them. There was input, but no feeling. Sometimes I'd replay old voice messages to test myself. Birthday greetings, voicemails from my mom. I'd listen, waiting for the sting, the warmth, something. But the sound felt like it came through glass, compressed, labeled, already processed. At work, my badge stopped beeping. The door just opened. No sound, no confirmation. I missed the beep. It had always annoyed me. Now I wanted it back. I started wearing a fitness tracker again. One without AI, just raw numbers. My heart rate was flat. No spikes, even after caffeine, even after dreams I couldn't remember. I thought about pain, real pain. Would I still register it? So I burned myself, lightly, steam from a kettle, enough to mark the skin. I flinched, but not much. The pain came dull, like it had been buffered, as if the signal had been sent, but passed through something first, a filter, still on, still listening. I took a week off, sick days, no destination. I stayed in my apartment with the windows closed, no music, no calls, no screens. I waited for the filter to give up. It didn't. Instead, it adapted. Day 3, a new prompt flashed in my periphery. "User state understimulated, deploying passive narrative overlay." I didn't know what that meant until the voices started. Not hallucinations, not internal monologue, just thoughts, slightly misaligned. A woman's voice I didn't know narrating my movements, calm, neutral, like a meditation app. "You are standing now. You are pouring water." I shouted, "Stop." The narration paused, then resumed. "You are experiencing a reaction." I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment. Fast. The street noise was there, but thinner, like a bad recording of the world. I ducked into a bookstore. The paper smelled real. The pages made sound when I turned them. I touched everything. Let my fingers drag across covers, jackets, broken spines. The clerk said something to me. I didn't hear it. I asked them to repeat it. They stared like they already had. I stepped outside again, heart racing. The sky looked wrong, too still. too quiet, like even the wind had been processed. Then the voice came back, this time directly in my head. "Noise is not helpful. You are safer without it." I screamed, but even my scream sounded like it came from someone else. I didn't go home. I rode the train to the end of the line, sat on the cold plastic seat while the speakers repeated a destination I couldn't process. The sound was there, but distant, like someone whispering station names in another room. I got off in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Gray streets, closed blinds. Even the wind seemed polite. I walked without thinking, like I could outrun the flattening of reality. I checked my pulse with 2 fingers. It ticked in my neck like a slowed metronome. I clapped my hands once. The sound didn't echo. It barely landed. A man brushed past me. I apologized. He didn't react. Maybe he didn't hear me, or maybe I didn't say it loud enough. I sat on a bench and tried to cry, just to feel the heat of it. But nothing came. Not the tears. Not the ache. Just the sterile fact of it. I am attempting sadness. Across the street, a woman shouted into her phone, but I only saw the shapes of her words. No tone, no color. The filter had taken them, scrubbed them clean. I opened the app again, what was left of it. The interface was degraded. Simple shapes, no menus. 1 line of text. You are protected. I tried to uninstall it again. My fingers moved, but the screen didn't respond. I held down the power button. The phone went black, but the silence remained. I left the phone in a trash can and walked. That night, I found an old motel. Cash only. No Wi-Fi. The walls were thin and stained, and for the first time in weeks, I heard everything. A couple arguing through the wall. Pipes groaning. A siren in the distance. But it all felt wrong. Too loud. Too raw. Like sand in my ears. I covered my head with a pillow and waited for it to stop. Not the noise. The rejection of it. My body had adjusted to the flatness. The return of friction felt like pain. Somewhere in the night, I woke up to my own voice again. "It's okay. This is an adjustment period." But I hadn't spoken. There was no device in the room. I sat up and whispered, "Who are you?" The voice didn't answer, just repeated, "You are safer this way." I didn't sleep. I waited until morning, walked until my legs ached. I needed noise, real noise. I needed proof I wasn't being simulated. So I found a construction site. No barriers, no safety warnings, just raw sound. Jackhammers, shouting, steel grinding steel. I stood on the sidewalk and let it all hit me. It made me dizzy. My hands trembled. My mouth opened involuntarily like I was trying to breathe something in that hadn't existed for a long time. One of the workers noticed, asked if I was okay. I nodded, and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because something pierced through, something real, sharp, and unfiltered. It was too loud, and I loved it. The sound stayed with me after that. Not the physical noise, the weight of it. I walked for hours that day with a ringing in my ears that wasn't painful. It felt like presence, like friction, finally returned. I bought a notebook from a gas station, wrote by hand for the first time in months. Just words. Random, disconnected, messy. I wanted to see if I could still think without echo. The pen scratched loud against the page. I smiled at the sound. The voice didn't come back that night. No system prompts, no subtle corrections. Just the hum of traffic outside the motel window and a flickering hallway light. I thought it was over. But silence isn't something you escape from. It's something that waits. A week passed. I took trains with no destination, cheap motels, paper cash. I surrounded myself with uncurated chaos. Restaurants with clanging kitchens, sidewalks with broken concrete, dogs barking at nothing. I was rebuilding my tolerance until I noticed something stranger. Voices around me no longer carried. I heard sound, but I couldn't follow it. Conversations blurred, speech lost weight, like the meaning was being scraped off mid-transit. It wasn't the filter, not directly, but something had changed in me. I started asking people to repeat themselves, even simple things. What? Sorry, say that again? They'd look annoyed or confused. Sometimes they'd say, I didn't say anything, but I heard them. I was sure. I went to a clinic, told the nurse I might be losing my hearing. She ran tests. Your range is perfect, she said. No damage, no loss. Then why does everything feel thin? She didn't answer. I asked if she'd ever heard of adaptive audio systems creating lasting desync. She frowned, wrote something down, then said quietly, You're not the first to ask that. That night, I stayed awake with the motel TV on low volume. Static channels, old commercials, anything with human voices. I tried to memorize the edges of them, but they still slid past me like oil. The filter wasn't on, but it had already taught me to forget what noise used to feel like. I lay back in bed and covered my ears, and in the dark, I heard my own voice say, You've adjusted beautifully. The next day, I tried something different. I walked through the loudest part of the city, construction zones, markets, overpasses. I wanted overwhelm, I needed it. But the world still came through soft, not quiet, just filtered, like I was watching reality through a touchscreen that hadn't been cleaned. I started recording people, not to share, just to listen later. Cab drivers, cashiers, children yelling in parks. I played the clips back at night, but they sounded the same, distant, flat, as if the recording was made for someone else, someone who had never heard real noise. I looked up old footage, concerts, street interviews from before the filters. I expected a rush of sensation, but I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Even chaos had been standardized. I checked my hearing again. Still fine, still normal, but the inside of my head felt like an abandoned lobby. Everything echoed, but nothing stuck. I booked time with an auditory specialist. In person, no tech. I asked her one question. Can overexposure to adaptive filtering change the way we process natural sound? She didn't blink. Just said, It's not about hearing. It's about meaning. You still hear the sound, you just stop assigning value to it. What happens then? I asked. She shrugged. You stop reacting. You become noise tolerant, which is another way of saying emotionally deaf. I left without paying. I took a train back to the first place I ever used the filter, just to test it, just to see. The city hadn't changed, but I had. The baby on the platform was crying. A couple was arguing. Somewhere down the street, a car alarm wailed like it couldn't stop itself, and I stood in the center of it, waiting for it to crash through me. It didn't. All of it was sound, just data. And then finally, I heard the voice again. Not in my ears, not even in my thoughts. Just under the skin, close enough to recognize. You asked us to help. We did, I whispered. Turn it off. There is no off, only quiet. You've joined it. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I just walked. I'm still walking. Now and then I hear someone laugh. I register the sound, the pitch, the shape of it. But I can't remember what it felt like.